Good evening. Time is 7:01. This meeting of the East Lyme Planning Commission is now in order. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Scott is not with us tonight, so Sammy, if you'd like to join us as an alternate. For the record, my name is Brian Shook. I'm the chairman. I'll ask each commission member to introduce yourself, please, for the record.
Peter Lynch. Sam Youssef.
Rita Palazzo.
Joan Bankton.
Brenda Henderson.
Our first order of business this evening is the continuation of a public hearing for the re-subdivision of 24 Darrows Ridge Road, East Lyme. Jason Pizzali, applicant, Past Construction LLC owner, application and waiver request from section 23.5 Bravo of the East Lyme zoning regulations for a one-lot re-subdivision of 5.29 acres of land within the R40, located at 24 Darrows Ridge Road.
I have to recuse myself.
Yep, as a matter of course, Ms. Palazzo is going to recuse herself from this order of business. To the commission members, I'm going to hand out a separate item, which is the memo from our town planner, Gary Gaishel. Here's this order of business. And with respect to the public hearing, we made it through a chunk at our last meeting. We continued it to this meeting, anticipating that there might be some response from either Mr. Gaishel's office or general follow-up. Seeing as Mr. Gaishel's not here tonight, we're going to continue as planned with the continuation of the public hearing. For the commission members, we are looking to wrap up the public hearing portion tonight, and you'll note that on our agenda, this re-subdivision is a regular order of business. So there's potential that if we close it, we could take action on it later this evening at our regular meeting. But first, I'll just do a call for any further comment for the record during the public hearing of the re-subdivision of 24 Darrows Ridge Road. Good evening, Mr. Harris.
Good evening. One issue that was raised at the previous public hearing was whether or not there were any pesticides on the site. So Bob Fanner will go over that with you. We did do some testing in the interim, and you'll see from what he shows you and from reports that we have that all typical resident pesticides were non-detectable on the site. And I'd like to submit that report as an exhibit.
Very well.
Thank you.
Brooke, we're cataloging the exhibits, so this would be the Victor for this public hearing. And this is a test of the soils. And you summarized it in, it looks like nothing was detected.
Correct.
I have another set of plans. That has been made a part of these plans,
Okay, it's
as well as their locations.
excellent.
This is another complete set. Do you want to just give it to the secretary?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I don't know what you want to call this first.
Let's do VW. So whiskey would be that.
So the sheets I put in front of you are just the two sheets that changed.
Mhm.
That's a complete set, just for the record part. You'll notice on those plans, there are two locations for where the tests were taken. I'm going to point them out for each one of you. There was one test here, one test here. One here, one right here. And if you flip to page 2, those test results that they just handed out are actually on that page as well. So basically, we took one site, one location for each lot, to have a test done to see what the soil conditions were in that. And as you stated, the results have found no detectable of any of the standard things that they test for pesticides.
Excellent. Thank you for following up with that. On my own, I did check on the State of Connecticut 1934 aerials, just to see if there was any sawmills or clear cutting, and those images are pretty hard to read, but as best I could tell, it was there was no evidence of any use that would, yeah.
Go ahead.
I checked with the town historian, and there are stories of the mills being up there. There's also stories that this was farmland. It was substantive, I mean, it was basically raising for the family, but it was farm. And not that that has anything to do with what we're doing, but that did exist, according to them.
I'm gonna submit 3 photographs I have here. These are
That
all
was in the 1800s, sorry.
these are all aerial photographs of that area. I have one from 1934, which is probably the one that you looked at. That actually does a side-by-side comparison. It shows you an aerial of today, and then right next to it, it gives you the same exact view from 1934. I'm going to submit that one. On these, you can see there's some farmland on the perimeters of that you can clearly see are farmland, if you ever looked at aerial photography before. And if you look around the pond on the north side, you can see that it looks like all forest. I also have another aerial photo from 1970. Same results. Also have another one from 1951 that also shows that whole area on the north side of the pond is wooded. Now, there is farmland, which you can clearly see on these photographs on the other side of the pond, that is very clear cut, and you can see them over by Lombardi's and all over the place. So I would like to submit these 3 for the record.
Thank you. Send them maybe over to Brooke, and VWX would be that exhibit. Can you- Thank you, Mr. Farron. Better? Would anyone else like to speak? Thank you, yeah.
As you know, this is a subdivision of an existing subdivision lot. The existing subdivision was in a cluster subdivision in those days, excuse me, of cluster subdivisions. It is now a conservation subdivision under the new regulations. And that leads me to one of your considerations tonight, and that is the waiver request. I've seen Gary's memo, and he lays that out very well in terms of the status and the criteria for the waiver. I'd just like to look back and generally talk about it. The waiver request is with respect to buffer issues. As part of the original subdivision, there was substantial buffers required along the pond, 100-foot conservation easement. In addition, there were substantial areas, particularly in this portion of the subdivision, of natural areas left vegetated. And for that reason, and the fact that now we're within a subdivision as opposed to the typical subdivision where you're looking at the perimeter of the subdivision, I think it makes eminent sense that additional buffers would not be required in this context. But again, I refer you to Gary's memo where he identifies the specific criteria, and I certainly don't want to go through it item by item since he's done such a good job in doing so. But I would refer you to that. And I certainly think that our request is consistent with the waiver requirements and the regulations. And finally, this is a re-subdivision. The lot does comply, as you've seen from the response from zoning, with the zoning regulations and with the subdivision regulations, as Gary has indicated, and I would urge that this be approved by the commission.
Thank you very much. The memo that he referenced is a memo that was distributed at our last meeting, so the commission members have had a chance to review it. I just handed out another copy just so we could all have it on hand, and that was a memorandum from Gary Geschel, Director of Planning. It's Exhibit Q in the file, and he takes apart the application and the specific, his recommendation. If you flip to the back, there is a motion here, so I'll call your attention to that. The town planner has provided a draft motion for us. Should we choose to use what he's written, we can modify it or ignore it or read it as is into our motion. However, that's when we get further down the line after we close the public hearing. So I'll do one more call for any public comment before we close the public hearing for the re-subdivision on 24 Darrows Ridge Road.
Good. I have a question. Should I wait till?
Uh,
I have two questions.
Okay.
I don't know if they pertain to now.
You can ask now.
One, can this goes back to my concern about the gravel driveway. Can this property be moved, the housing, can that be terraced? Yeah, I know it's expensive, but can that be terraced so the housing is closer to the gravel driveway, the existing gravel driveway?
Mr. Harris, could you speak into the?
Let's get this mic.
Sorry, Mr. Lynch.
Mr. Lynch, I'm sorry.
That's all right. And second, can there be like in a condominium situation, a property manager to oversee the ponds? In other words, that they have, because, for example, as I brought up, if I bought the property, can I not turn that into a koi pond?
I might just intercede here because I'll run it as the chairman. But with respect to your comment in Mr. Geschel's memo, he has addressed that issue in bullet point 2, where he writes, an erosion sedimentation control bond in the amount of $8,000 shall be posted with the town in form acceptable to the commission and satisfactory to the town attorney or planning director prior to start of any site work. Point 3 is a conservation easement shall be extended to include the existing natural wood buffers on both side yard property boundaries. I believe in the erosion and sedimentation bond, it would be understood that that's for the maintenance. I'm not sure. What, with respect to the maintenance of the engineered.
The erosion and sedimentation bond
That's
would cover the period of time during construction when obviously there's the most likelihood of issues in terms of erosion. Once the site is completely stabilized and the town is satisfied that it is stabilized and functioning properly, that's when that bond would be released. But it's there to protect the time when there's the most likelihood of any issues occurring.
Thank you.
Also, with respect to protecting the pond itself, there is an existing 100-foot buffer and conservation easement, which was part of the original subdivision, and those requirements remain.
Thank you. So, Mr. Lynch, did that address your concern?
No.
So you're not talking about not during construction. You're talking about
I'm talking
after.
about after.
Okay.
I mean, I buy the property. I do what I want to with it once it's cleared.
Right.
And so, and I say this because we had a retention pond at my school, and my students loved to play in it. And they would come in soaking wet, who's going to maintain, if the town's not going to maintain it, who's going to maintain it?
That's a fair question, but I think it's outside of our public hearing. It has to
That's
do
why I
with-
asked.
Yeah. No, good question. Do you have any other comments that we'd like to put on the record? Going twice? Without further, we go 3 times here, so you had time. You had plenty of
I
time.
was writing some stuff down.
Plenty of time.
I was in another world.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Okay, yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and other planning board members. My name is John B. Alawans, Jr. of 61 Walnut Hill Road, and I would like to make some comments on 24 Darrell's Ridge. The first one is, I never received an answer about one rain garden serving 2 houses. I never have heard that, and I have never seen it used, so I would like to have an answer to that. And then when Mr. Torrance is a smart man, and he would have made 2 lots in the beginning of this project, I wonder how many big lots, if any, were re-subdivided into 2 lots later on. Did they have the same type of topography? ledge, steepness, environmental issues, damage already done to Mustaway Lake, and the silt fence has failed already since he filled in his septic systems, and will continue to fail. They would probably say, like Centerplan always said, unusual circumstances. Fanner Associates said they did all the work from the beginning of Darrell's Ridge. They take a lot of information in, like terrain, steepness, environmental issues, determine where the roads and lots are going. They try to design the work to give the developer the most for the buck. Now Fanner is saying that this 5.29 acres of land can be re-subdivided with all the issues that could happen with these two lots being developed and already has. I did not get an answer about the driveway permit off of a private road. Did other houses already built get a driveway permit? I also did not get an answer for the January 11th 206 wetland survey and the September 5th 206 ecological assessment survey. How can they be used now? They're 10 years old. I couldn't use 2-year-old surveys when I was trying to do something on our property. And another thing is, how could you prep a septic system area not knowing if there's going to be a one-lot re-subdivision of this 5.29 parcel of land? That sounds pretty fishy to me. Would like to have an answer to this question. What were they trying to do, get away with? Did not get an answer about the septic system being so close to a intermediate water course and 100-foot wetlands upland review area. Lot number 30-1 using 1 inch to 40 feet. Wetlands flagging 85 to 95. Wetland area numbers are close to the septic system area. And also, the 100-foot wetland upland review area is in the septic system area. Lot number 30-2, using 1 inch to 40 feet. Wetlands number 95 through WC6, through WC12, through WC15, too close to the septic system area. 100-foot wetlands upland review area is in the septic system also. I have the same situation on our property and was told that the system had to be 100 feet away from the intermediate water course and outside the 100-foot upland review area. Can anyone do this, or regulations don't apply here? During the time I was speaking at the podium, Fanner jumped up and went to the podium and started speaking over me. To me, also other people in the room thought his actions were very unprofessional and shows the Planning Commission that something is being hid, rushed through, or not following the regulations completely. I thought regulations are here.
When he's finished.
See-
When he's finished. Yep.
You know, if it ain't Fanner, it's Harris. So
I want you to know that you have all the time you'd like to speak.
Okay. I thought regulations are there for all people to follow, and those retention ponds will never be maintained by the homeowners. And there's another problem with this one lot re-subdivision. Example, solar farm on Grassy Hill Road and Walnut Hill Road. There is always runoff into the wetlands every time it rains. Even after 1 inch of rain goes into the retention ponds, then into the wetlands, and then into our damaged intermediate water course from previous retention pond failures. I'm just expressing my concerns, worries, and experience on a very hot lot to be re-subdivided. Avoiding more environmental problems for Musselway Lake that was already damaged and will continue during construction and when the job is finished. We have the same situation on our property. I fixed it already and would like to speak out to see how this one lot re-subdivision is handled with all these problems that it already has and will continue to have after just one big rainstorm that will come. Example, look at the solar farm project failures. I couldn't speak at the wetlands meeting because it was on an agenda which should be changed. I don't know how a public hearing can be closed when questions that were raised up and have not been answered completely. Another thing I noticed is how one individual can make three professional people get all wound up. I'm just using common sense on this project and my experience of doing lots like that. And also, Fanner said about he has some aerial photos of the area dated in 1934. The farming was being used back in the early 1800s to World War I, past that, and everything else. Have any town employee look at this lot after the last rainstorm to see if there was any erosion and everything else. And I'd like to see if any commission members also went up there to look at that lot after the little rainstorm that we had with 2.5, probably 3 inches. I just have a lot of reservations about this property. If it was going to be developed, it would have been done a long time ago and everything else. And that is a very steep lot and everything else, and I don't see how you can make a 5.29 lot into something like 3 and then another 1 acre. You're just asking for troubles, and if you pass this regulation, which, if it happens to do, a lot of other people are going to use this as their next, as a reference before the Planning Commission and Wetlands Commission, that this should not happen. They should have just left it at 5.29 acres and that's it. You're just going to open up a can of worms if you approve this and everything, because of the terrain and everything, and already the damage that's been there happened already even before they even started work. But the one thing that really surprised me is how there was 2 septic systems prepared even before they knew it was going to be a 1-lot subdivision. That is like pushing the limit of saying that, well, I'm just going to build down here and that's it.
Just to be clear, because I was jotting down your list of comments. Your first one was, you mentioned that one rain garden.
Right.
Was on 2 different lots. 2 different lots are using 1 rain garden?
Yep,
In your
right in
understanding?
the middle.
And I just want to direct that to Mr. Fanner. Is that correct? Okay.
And it's just that the idea is I just happened to be here at a meeting and I heard that this was going on, and I said, this is the one that I have to speak up, because anybody that buys my property would be probably going through the same thing.
Sure.
But we can just use this as a reference, saying that he was allowed to do it, so why can't we? And that's all I would like to say.
Right, and if I could just hold you for a minute, because I want to make sure, Brooke, that we would get down your comments. There was the one rain garden serving to the 2 lots. You had a question about the driveway permit?
Yeah, I don't know, if the other lots got driveway permits off of a private drive.
You had a question on the environmental impact, how old it was and if it was still valid?
Yep.
And then you had a question about the septic being too close to the wetland flags.
Right.
Did I cover it?
Yep, you covered the big ones and everything else. But it's just that the idea is that I don't know how they can use an archaeological study and a wetlands study that is already 10 years old. And I was told by Gary that I just did one 2 years ago, and I was going to do something with mine, extend it a little bit more now, and then I just gave up on the idea because I didn't want to, work anymore. And which one? He says that lot that you want to subdivide in the front of your property has to be 100 feet away from the intermediate water course and 100 foot away from the upland review area and everything.
Okay.
And I just say, well, how come you tell me that, but when you measure off the maps that were supplied to you commission members, they're within it, like about probably 30, 40 feet or so. And I don't understand how that could happen. And then the other thing was, about the septic system, which is really surprising. And what else was there? No, that should be the most important part, is that you should follow your regulations and everything else and make sure everybody's treated the same. You know, if one person has to do one thing, another person can do that, that is not right, I don't think. And everything else, and I'm just expressing my opinion and my everything. I'm not trying to like knock this project down, but it's just that the idea is that how can one person do all this stuff even before they get a re-subdivision?
Thank you
and
for your
everything.
concerns.
Okay, thank you.
I want to give Mr. Harris a chance to talk, and then I'll, sorry about that. We'd like to take this into the record as, what letter are we on?
And then the last,
Of course.
and the last time I gave one of these reports, wasn't in the, on minutes.
Okay, we'll address that because, yeah, if, generally speaking, your comments should be captured in the minutes by
Yeah,
the
but this
secretary.
is not
But
done.
if this is, this we can take as an exhibit.
Well, I gave one last week, at the last meeting.
Okay.
And it wasn't in the minutes at all.
I'll make a note to have
I
Mr.
would
Gay
just
follow
like
that
to know
up.
why, it could be done like that.
Yes, it should be part of the record.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
My first general comment is the standards before this commission are the standards in the regulation as well as the standards in the Wetlands Commission regulations. And we assert that we meet those standards, and that's why we assert we're entitled to our permit tonight. But to answer some specific questions, first, as I answered last time with respect to the driveway permit, first, it wouldn't be required at this stage in any event because that's required at such time as you start construction. But a driveway permit is with respect to a cut to a town road. This is not a town road, so it wouldn't be required, as I indicated to you last time. Questions about proximity to the wetlands and wetland flags. This development has received a wetlands permit, and that implies that they have reviewed the plan, the location of the wetland flags, and approved it. It also received an approval for a septic design, and that septic design also requires setbacks, and those setbacks were approved by legislature.